Hello guys and welcome back. If you're planning to develop your application and you have heard this term of Laravel, in this video we are going to discuss in detail what is Laravel and what are the advantages as well as what are the disadvantages, if I may, and what are the important features Laravel as a framework has in store for you. First thing first, what exactly is Laravel? Now, if something is not visible for you on the screen, you can actually go to the official Laravel website and you can see it from there. I've taken this particular definition from there. They say Laravel is a web application framework which has a quite expressive way of doing things, and it has elegant styling. It has already laid the foundation, freeing you to create without sweating on the small stuff. This definition, in my opinion, is a bit confusing. For a very specific reason, it does not tell me what actually Laravel is capable of doing. If I talk about my personal experience, I have developed application from Laravel version from 4 to Laravel version 9, which is the latest version of Laravel. It is one of the most elegant framework, if I may talk about, especially in the family of PHP language, if I may. What happens, this particular framework altogether has the capacity, if I may, if I want to build some big application. With big application, I mean they have a lot of stuff going inside the application that it becomes very difficult for smaller frameworks to manage. In that case, Laravel is actually a quite good choice for developing those applications. And now let's try to understand what are the different features which are available with Laravel. Now, when we talk about features, it is something which we have to understand, like every single framework altogether has some advantages, or I should say features available. You are not limited that these features are available only in Laravel and that is why I'll use it. These features will be available, can be available in the other frameworks as well, like let's say CodeIgniter, Falcon, if I may, or Cake PHP, whatever different frameworks are there in the PHP family. But if I talk about in terms of the inbuiltness, something which is available out of the box, this is something where Laravel actually excels. So the first feature which I'm going to discuss is obviously free and open source. The beauty of Laravel here is obviously it is available for free and it is available as open source. So if I'm an enterprise level customer, if I'm an enterprise, if I'm a big company, or if I'm a small startup who cannot afford a huge license fees on monthly basis or a single time fees, in that case, I can take advantage of the freeness and the open sourceness which is available. So it gives us the edge over the other frameworks so that I can customize the application. I can customize the framework as per my requirement. The second feature in Laravel is obviously that it has a MVC architecture. What M stands for? M is actually stands for model. Model is something which talks to database. Model is something which talks to the database. View is something which is visible to the end user. I'm not sure if you are able to read what I've written. And finally, the controller. Controller is a person who is going to decide what model to talk to, what view to send the data, and what kind of a data I have to receive from that particular view, and on which model I have to send it. Now, if you're not aware of what is MVC, I would say that you should look for what is MVC. You should search what is MVC, because that is going to make you understand what MVC architecture altogether stands for. So if you are aware of what is MVC, obviously Laravel is dependent on this architecture of MVC. Now, back in 2011, when I was learning PHP as a language in my college days, I can especially recall I was sitting in my college bus and I was looking at the code and I was trying to understand what mistakes I'm making, because of which I'm not able to create this simple login application. I was taking email address, I was taking the password, and I was not able to build that application. It is very simple. These days I can make it within 30 minutes, if I may, but that time I spent around 6 days. Now you can imagine, I was a learner, I was a student at the time, I had college also, a lot of things were happening there. So you can understand, like if it takes me 6 days to learn, if a new person right now is going to do this thing, it is going to take more hours. So what I want to say is, Laravel has a feature of inbuilt authentication. You just have to run one single command and the authentication part is taken care by Laravel, just one single command. And the whole authentication part is taken care by Laravel, so you don't have to write any single code. Obviously, if you want to customize something, you can customize it, but in terms of logging a user in with their credentials, in terms of registering a user, in terms of managing their sessions, all are taken care by this authentication module, which is implemented using just one single command. Now, if we talk about the security of the application, Laravel is secure, but the problem is if you are an individual person, if you are an indie developer, what happens that you have to understand all the security loopholes within the application or of the framework. What Laravel has done, like let's say if you're throwing some data to the user, they follow a blade template. It not only makes you efficient, if I may, but it also helps you keep your application secure. So whatever data you are throwing in the view is going to be sanitized. Whatever data is coming from the user is going to be sanitized. Now, obviously, this is something which is hardcore security part of it. But if I talk about in terms of Blade, so Blade as a templating engine provides you a way to actually efficiently make your application and make the application which is quite scalable and modular without actually breaking huge number of things, or I should say creating huge number of files within the Laravel application. Now, when you talk to database returns the data in two kind of a format that depends upon the library. One is in the format of an array and one is in the format of objects. Now, since we are developing the application on Laravel and Laravel is actually more focused towards the object-based things. So Laravel has something which is known as ORM, which is also known as Object Relational Model. What it does, that it helps you create the data, or I should say data as an object, rather than creating data as a individual figure or in form of table. It is going to create the data in terms of object. So it makes your life easier. Secondly, running the queries are quite complex. If you have to run a join query, if you have to run a query using group by, it becomes very difficult to remember every single of command. But what Laravel has done, since it follows the ORM, it becomes very easy to write some simple and plain queries which will be converted into MySQL queries later when the Laravel is fetching their data. But it helps us write efficient queries so everyone within the team can understand it quite easily. Now, if you have never heard of this term version control, I would say right now is the right time for you to understand what is a version control. If you want me, I can make a separate video on that. But version control was previously available only for the source code. It was not available at the database level. But what Laravel has done, Laravel has integrated this database migrations which are technically version control at the database level. So in simple terms, let's say our table has 3 columns right now. Okay, and in addition I have this new column right now available in my table. So you can see just like this red one and the green one are differentiated with the help of this database migration. You can differentiate at what level, at what time, what kind of a columns, what kind of a data types were available at my table. So you can customize your application according to your requirement, or you can understand what could be the breaking point. Now, this is something which is majorly used. All the major companies, if I talk about database migration, is something they cannot ignore this part. And this is something which is available as out of the box thing inside Laravel. Maybe you're not a big fan of a terminal screen because these days everything happens with a touch, everything happens with the GUI. But Laravel has something which is known as Artisan Commands. Now, these Artisan Commands are going to make your life so easier that you will think that should I go back to the GUI? As I mentioned, if I want to build an authentication application, I have to spend around 30 minutes. But just by writing one single command, it will hardly take 30 seconds for me to build the whole authentication available in my application. And this all happens using the Artisan command. If I have to create a migration, if I have to create a database seeder, whatever that is, I have to create a model, I have to create a controller, I have to create a resource controller, whatever these things are, with single commands, I can create all those major components of Laravel within 30 seconds or less, if I may. So this is one of the big features which is available in Laravel, and obviously it is inbuilt. Now, every application, if we talk about, or I should say framework, if that is not modular, With modular, I mean you cannot break it into smaller pieces. Then it becomes very difficult for us to take the whole module, or I should say whole framework together. So Laravel has the advantage that it is modular, so that whatever pieces of application you feel like are not required for you, you can remove them. And obviously this is not going to impact your framework of Laravel altogether, because this is available as a modular framework. Now, when I came to know that there is something which is known as task scheduling available inbuilt in Laravel, I was quite shocked. I was like, why I was not using it from day one? Now, with the help of task scheduling, I can actually have my cron tabs, or I should say automatic tasks, which are supposed to be run in my source control in my application itself. So I don't have to log in into my server. I don't have to SSH into my server again and again to check if the cron tabs are running or not. So this is something which actually enhances your productivity. It makes you efficient, and it gives you control back from your like the authentication, or I should say the system admin, to the person who is developing the application, to make sure that you have the control at the end of the day. Now, if you're writing the application and if you were like me of not writing test, you are making a mistake. You should be writing test. Now, obviously, if you have a big company, someone else is writing the test for you. But if you are working in a small company, you should be writing a test. But the problem is, what framework to use, how to use it. Is it complex? Should I learn a new thing? Because I'm already learning different things. How will I learn a new thing? Laravel has a testing framework which is available. It has inbuilt frameworks, if I may, or I should say the libraries altogether, I would say, that actually matches with the wavelength of Laravel, so that I can make my application, or I should say I can make my testing quite easier. So if someone new joins in your company, they don't have to learn a new testing framework altogether. If they are aware of Laravel, they will be able to get started with testing on Laravel environment within next 30 minutes. That is my personal guarantee. Now, if you're not satisfied with all those features I have discussed in this scenario, you should know that there are tons of libraries which are available with Laravel. So the advantage is, if I don't like something, I can actually go to a different vendor and I can integrate that application, or I should say that part of it, with myself. So I'm not limited to what I have the availability, but also one thing which is quite unique about Laravel is that it has so many libraries available, or I should say they are built by the team of Laravel, so that it makes your life quite easier. You don't have to run into different vendors. Even though if you want, you can, but Laravel has so many features, or I should say so many libraries which are available, which integrate with Laravel seamlessly, so you don't have to go for a different vendor. So does this mean Laravel is one of the greatest framework and I don't have to learn anything? Well, the answer is no. It has some pain points, and let's try to understand what these pain points are. Now, first pain point is obviously constant upgrades. Now, this is something even irritating, or I should say annoying for me also. I was developing an application on Laravel version 7. And again, after some time, I saw that Laravel version 8 is there. And now Laravel version 9 is there. And 10 is on the way. So you can see there is constant upgrade. But Avinash, that is a good thing. Well, obviously that is a good thing. But a lot of time there are some changes happen in the code. There are ways with which they actually differentiate, or I should say they upgrade the way things have to be done. So they are no more. Like, you cannot support the legacy piece of code. If you're upgrading to the new framework, you have to write in this kind of a fashion. So this becomes a difficult point, or I should say this becomes a pain point for an individual, because I have faced it. I have talked to various developers of Laravel. They are also not happy with what this does. Secondly, lack of support for legacy versions. As I mentioned, that there is technically no or lack of support for the legacy version. So what happens, like let's say Laravel has upgraded its version from version A to version B. Now, if you have the capacity of upgrading your application, that is good. But if you do not have the capacity of upgrading your application, it becomes difficult, because since this is a free application, they are not bounded to keep it secure every single time. There is a LTE version released. After the end of the life cycle, the version is left altogether for you to maintain and for you to patch. The next point is, it is actually a large framework, which I would actually genuinely agree. It is quite a large framework. So if you're building a very small or simple application, Laravel is not one such framework for you for a very specific reason, because it is a very large framework. And obviously, if you go somewhere with a large framework, it gets difficult for you to move from place A to place B. And finally, it has a learning curve. So if someone who is coming from a different background, or if someone who is a fresher and he's coming from zero background, it is going to have a learning curve there. So if you're not prepared for that, it is going to be difficult. And looking at the constant upgrades, you have to constantly upgrade your knowledge, otherwise it will be difficult for you to actually survive. So what is the conclusion? We have discussed what is Laravel framework altogether, what are the features available, what are the pain points available. We have to understand, if I talk about in terms of a conclusion, so this conclusion is not from the perspective of our language, but this is my personal experience. PHP as a language, Laravel as a framework is dependent on PHP as a language. Now PHP is upgrading itself, but it is not reaching at the pace with which the different languages like Node are upgrading themselves. So a lot of people are instead shifting to that kind of an environment, and especially if I talk about in terms of Node.js, so a lot of people are going toward that scenario, because there they have to learn just one single language. If I talk about myself, let's say if I have to create a new language, if I go for Laravel, I have to learn two new languages, PHP plus JavaScript. But if I'm going for Node.js, so I have to just learn this language of JavaScript. But is this the only differentiating factor? Well, the answer is no. Laravel as a framework, I'll talk about, is upgrading itself. It has so many new features coming in. And if your company has a heavy PHP dependency, this can be one of the best framework you guys can use which is available in the market.